The morning sunlight streamed through our kitchen window as I buttered Emma's toast, watching Nathan pour his coffee with that same methodical precision he brought to everything. 7 years of marriage, and I could predict his every move. Pour coffee, add 1 sugar, check phone, kiss Emma's forehead, kiss my cheek, leave for work. The smell of burned toast filled our kitchen that Tuesday morning, but I barely noticed. I was too busy crafting the perfect way to tell my husband that everything he believed about our marriage was naive and outdated. "Nathan, we need to talk about something important," I said, sliding into the chair across from him at our breakfast table. He looked up from his laptop, those tired brown eyes focusing on me with the same patient attention he'd given me for 8 years of marriage. "What's on your mind, Eudoxia?" he asked, closing his laptop. Nathan always gave me his full attention when I said we needed to talk. It was one of his better qualities, though, frankly, it sometimes made me feel like he was treating me like a client at his IT consulting firm. I took a deep breath and launched into the speech I'd been rehearsing. "I've been thinking a lot about relationships lately, about what's realistic and what's just fantasy, and I think we need to be honest about monogamy." Nathan's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" "I mean, look around us. Look at statistics. Look at human nature. Monogamy is this artificial construct that society pushes on us, but it's not realistic. People aren't wired to be with just one person forever. It's biological fact." The silence stretched between us. From upstairs, I could hear Emma getting ready for school, her little feet padding across the hardwood floor of her bedroom. "Are you saying," Nathan set down his cup carefully, "that you don't want to be monogamous?" "I'm saying that I think we're both intelligent enough to acknowledge reality instead of living in some fairy tale. Everyone has attractions to other people. Everyone fantasizes. Some people are just honest about it." Nathan's face had gone very still. It was the same expression he got when troubleshooting a particularly complex network problem at work. "And what exactly are you being honest about, Eudoxia?" I felt a thrill of power. This was exactly the kind of mature adult conversation that separated enlightened people like me from the masses who clung to outdated notions of romance. "I'm saying that if we're going to have a real marriage, we need to acknowledge that attraction to other people is natural. Acting on it doesn't have to be the end of the world." "Acting on it." Nathan repeated the words like he was testing their weight. "You're talking about cheating." "I'm talking about honesty, about not living a lie." I reached across the table to touch his hand, but he pulled it away. "Nathan, everyone does this. Everyone. They just lie about it and feel guilty. I'm suggesting we be more evolved than that." Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs. "Mom, I can't find my math homework." "Check your backpack," I called back, then turned to Nathan. "Look, I know this is a lot to process, but I think if you really examine your own thoughts, your own impulses, you'll realize I'm right." Nathan stood up slowly. He was 35, 3 years older than me, but in that moment he looked much older. "I need to get to work." "We're not done talking about this." "Yes," he said quietly, "we are." After Nathan left and I'd gotten Emma off to school, I felt energized in a way I hadn't in months. There was something liberating about finally being honest, about refusing to play the game of pretending our marriage was some perfect fairy tale. I pulled out my phone and texted Julian. Finally had the conversation with N. "You were right, honesty is the only way forward." Julian worked as a bartender at Vintage, the wine bar downtown, where I'd been spending my Thursday nights for the past 3 months. He was 30, charming, and refreshingly direct about what he wanted from life. Unlike Nathan, he didn't bog everything down with emotional complications. My phone buzzed with his reply. How did he take it? Better than expected. I think he's actually relieved to stop pretending. That evening, Nathan came home later than usual. Emma was already in her pajamas, curled up on the couch watching cartoons. I was folding laundry in the living room when Nathan walked in, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "How was work?" I asked, not looking up from the towels I was folding. "Fine." He kissed the top of Emma's head. "Hey, sweetheart, how was school?" "Good. We learned about fractions. Want to see?" Nathan sat down next to our daughter, and I watched them go through her math worksheet together. He was patient with her in a way that I sometimes envied. Emma adored her father, and the feeling was clearly mutual. Later, after Emma was in bed, Nathan and I found ourselves in the kitchen again. He was loading the dishwasher while I wiped down the counters. "I've been thinking about what you said this morning," he said without looking at me. "And? I don't understand how you can call it honesty when you're talking about lying to our daughter, lying to our families, lying to everyone except the person you're sleeping with behind my back." I felt my cheeks flush. "I never said I was sleeping with anyone." Nathan straightened up and looked at me directly. "Aren't you?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have denied it. I could have deflected. Instead, I doubled down on my philosophy. "I'm saying that if I was, it wouldn't have to destroy our family. It wouldn't have to mean I love you any less or that I'm a bad mother. Those are just stories society tells us to keep us trapped in unrealistic expectations." Nathan nodded slowly. "I see. Do you? Because I really think if you could get past the conditioning, the jealousy programming, you'd realize this could actually make our marriage stronger. More honest." "More honest," Nathan repeated. He closed the dishwasher and turned to face me fully. "Eudoxia, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I have never, in 8 years of marriage, been attracted to another woman in any way that made me want to act on it. I have never fantasized about cheating on you. I have never wanted anyone else." "That's not realistic, Nathan. I'm not everyone." His voice was quiet but firm. "I'm your husband, and I chose you. Every day for 8 years, I chose you. I thought you were choosing me too." Something in his tone made me pause. Nathan wasn't dramatic. He didn't make grand speeches or emotional declarations. The fact that he was being this direct meant something. "I am choosing you," I said. "That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. I'm choosing to be honest with you instead of lying like everyone else does." Nathan picked up his laptop bag from where he'd set it on the counter. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. I need some time to think." "Nathan, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting." But he was already walking away, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my righteous indignation and the lingering smell of dishwasher detergent. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. Julian had texted again. "Want to grab a drink tomorrow? Sounds like you could use one." I smiled and typed back, "Definitely. Same time, same place?" "Always." I set my phone on the counter and looked around our kitchen. The breakfast dishes were clean, the counters were spotless, and everything was exactly as it should be. Nathan would come around. He just needed time to process what I was offering him. Freedom from the exhausting pretense of perfect monogamy. Everyone wanted that freedom. I was just brave enough to take it. The next evening, I met Julian at Vintage as planned. The wine bar was dimly lit, with exposed brick walls and the kind of sophisticated atmosphere that made me feel like the cosmopolitan woman I'd always known I was meant to be. Julian was behind the bar when I arrived, his dark hair falling slightly over his eyes as he mixed drinks for a couple at the far end. He looked up when I walked in and gave me that slow smile that had first caught my attention 3 months ago. "The usual?" he asked when I slid onto my regular stool. "Make it a double." He poured me a generous glass of Pinot Grigio and leaned against the bar. "Rough day?" Nathan's being dramatic about our conversation. I expected some resistance, but honestly, I thought he was more mature than this. Julian nodded sympathetically. "Most people can't handle that level of honesty. They're too wrapped up in their fantasies about how relationships are supposed to work." "Exactly." I took a long sip of wine. I'm trying to offer him something real, something authentic, and he's acting like I've betrayed him somehow. Have you told him about us specifically? Not yet. I wanted to ease him into the concept first, but I think he suspects something. Julian refilled my glass without being asked. Maybe it's time to just rip the Band-Aid off, show him that this doesn't have to be a big deal. I considered this. Actually, we have dinner at his parents' house this weekend. Maybe that would be a good opportunity to normalize the conversation. Get other people involved so he can see that his reaction is extreme. Sounds like a plan. That Saturday, the three of us drove to Nathan's parents' house for our monthly family dinner. Emma chatted excitedly in the back seat about an art project she wanted to show her grandmother, while Nathan and I sat in silence in the front. Nathan's mother, Deborah, answered the door with her usual warm smile. At 60, she was still an attractive woman, with silver hair that she wore in an elegant bob, and Nathan's same thoughtful brown eyes. "Eudoxia, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a hug. "How are you?" "I'm wonderful, Deborah, really wonderful." Nathan's brother Leo was already there with his wife Sarah and their 2 kids. The house filled with the comfortable chaos of family dinner. Kids running around, adults catching up, the smell of Deborah's famous pot roast filling the air. Over dinner, the conversation turned to a mutual friend's recent divorce. "Such a shame about Monica and Jeff," Deborah said, shaking her head. 20 years of marriage, down the drain. "Well," I said, setting down my fork, "maybe it's not really a shame. Maybe they're both better off being honest about what they want, instead of pretending to be happy in a situation that wasn't working." Sarah nodded. "That's true. It's better than staying miserable." "But the thing is," I continued, feeling emboldened, "a lot of these divorces could be prevented if people were just more realistic about relationships from the beginning. All this pressure to find your one true love and never be attracted to anyone else, it's completely unrealistic." Leo looked uncomfortable. "I don't know, Eudoxia. Sarah and I are pretty happy with our arrangement." "But you've been together, 6 years? The 7-year itch is a real thing. It's biological. Humans aren't designed to be monogamous long-term." I could feel Nathan's eyes on me, but I pressed on. "I'm not saying people should get divorced. I'm saying maybe we need to be more flexible about what marriage means. More honest about the fact that everyone has attractions to other people." "Not everyone," Nathan said quietly. "Oh, come on, Nathan. Everyone fantasizes. Everyone notices other people. Some people are just more honest about it." Deborah's expression had grown cold. "Are you saying you fantasize about other men, Eudoxia?" "I'm saying I'm honest about being human. I don't pretend to be some perfect wife who never notices that other men exist." The table had gone silent, except for the sound of the kids playing in the living room. Sarah was staring at her plate, while Leo looked back and forth between Nathan and me. "I think," Deborah said carefully, "that when you make a commitment to someone, you honor that commitment, in thought and in deed." "That's a lovely ideal, Deborah, but it's not realistic. Studies show that the majority of marriages involve some form of infidelity. The only difference is whether people are honest about it or whether they sneak around and lie." "So you think honesty justifies betrayal?" This came from Leo, and his voice was sharp. "I think honesty prevents betrayal. If couples could just acknowledge that attraction to other people is normal and natural, they could work together instead of against each other." Nathan stood up abruptly. "Excuse me," he said, and walked out of the dining room. "Nathan," Deborah called after him, but he was already gone. I felt a flash of irritation. Nathan was making this into a bigger deal than it needed to be, and now he was embarrassing me in front of his family. "He's having trouble with the concept," I said with a laugh. "But I think once he really thinks about it, he'll realize I'm right." Deborah's face was stone. "Eudoxia, I think you should go find your husband." I excused myself and found Nathan outside in his parents' backyard, standing by the old oak tree where he and Leo used to play as kids. "You're being ridiculous," I said, walking up behind him. He didn't turn around. "Am I?" "Yes. I'm trying to have an adult conversation about marriage, and you're acting like a child." An adult conversation. Nathan turned to face me. Is that what you call humiliating me in front of my family? I'm not humiliating you. I'm trying to normalize a conversation that needs to be had. Your mother is just old-fashioned. My mother has been married to my father for 38 years. They're happy. They're faithful to each other. They don't need your enlightened perspective on why that's impossible. Nathan, you're missing the point entirely. No, Eudoxia, you are. He started walking back toward the house. We're leaving. Get Emma. The drive home was tense. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, and Nathan and I didn't speak until we were pulling into our driveway. I think you owe your family an apology, I said as we got out of the car. Nathan lifted Emma carefully from her car seat. I think you owe my family an apology. For what? For being honest. For whatever it is you're really doing when you stay out until midnight on Thursdays. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my voice steady. I go to book club. At a wine bar. It's a wine and book club. Nathan carried Emma inside without responding. I followed, my mind racing. How much did he actually know? Later that night, after Emma was in bed, I found Nathan in his home office, typing on his laptop. What are you working on? I asked from the doorway. Just some research, he said without looking up. Research for work? Something like that. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I pushed it away. Nathan was hurt and angry, but he'd come around. He just needed time to process what I was offering him. I went to bed alone again that night, but before I turned off the lights, I checked my phone. Julian had texted, "How did dinner go?" I typed back, "Could have been better. Nathan's family is pretty traditional." "Want to talk about it tomorrow? I'm working the lunch shift." I hesitated for a moment, then typed, "Yes, I think it's time to move to the next phase of this conversation." "Agreed. See you tomorrow." I set my phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. Everything was going according to plan, even if it was messier than I'd expected. Nathan would eventually realize that I was right. Everyone would. I was just ahead of the curve. The next Monday at the dental clinic, where I worked as a hygienist, I found myself surrounded by my co-workers during lunch break. The staff room was small and cramped, with a refrigerator that hummed too loudly and fluorescent lights that made everyone look pale. But it was the perfect place for the kind of honest conversation I'd been craving. "You actually told him that?" asked Jennifer, one of the other hygienists. She was 26 and newly married, still caught up in the fantasy of perfect love. "I told him the truth," I said, unwrapping my salad. "That monogamy is an unrealistic expectation that sets couples up for failure." "But what did he say?" This came from Carol, the office manager, who was 55 and twice divorced. "He's processing it. Change is hard for some people, especially when they've been conditioned to believe in fairy tales their whole lives." Jennifer looked shocked. "But don't you think marriage is supposed to be about commitment? About choosing one person? Marriage is supposed to be about partnership and honesty. If my husband and I can acknowledge that we're both human beings with normal human attractions, we can build something real instead of living a lie." Dr. Peterson, the dentist who owned the practice, poked his head into the break room. "Ladies, we've got Mrs. Hamilton here for her 2 o'clock cleaning." "I'll take her," I said, standing up. "But think about what I said, Jennifer. Ask yourself if you've never noticed another man since you got married. If you've never wondered what it would be like to kiss someone else. Because if you say no, you're lying to yourself." Jennifer's face flushed red, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. Everyone had these thoughts. I was just brave enough to admit them. That afternoon, I had a long lunch break between appointments, so I drove to Vintage to see Julian. The lunch crowd was smaller than the evening crowd, mostly business people grabbing quick drinks and light meals. "You look stressed," Julian said when I sat down at the bar. "Nathan's being more difficult than I expected, and his family is completely unsupportive. Maybe it's time to stop asking for permission and start living your life." I looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're trying to get everyone else to validate your choices. but you don't need their permission to be happy. Julian was right, of course. I was 28 years old, intelligent, attractive, and capable of making my own decisions. I didn't need Nathan's approval to live authentically. "You know what?" I said, reaching across the bar to touch Julian's hand. "You're absolutely right." That evening, I got home to find Nathan in the kitchen making dinner. Emma was at the table doing homework, her little tongue poking out in concentration as she worked on a math worksheet. "How was your day?" Nathan asked, without looking up from the stove. "Enlightening. I had some really interesting conversations at work about marriage and relationships." "I'm sure you did." Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Dinner's almost ready." But I could tell it wasn't nothing. Nathan had that same careful, controlled expression he'd been wearing for days. After dinner, while Nathan was helping Emma with her bath, my phone rang. It was Deborah. "Eudoxia, we need to talk." "Of course, Deborah. What's on your mind?" "I ran into Sarah Martinez at the grocery store today. Her daughter is in Emma's class." My stomach tightened. Sarah Martinez was one of the most prominent gossips at Emma's school. "Oh?" "She asked me how you and Nathan were handling your open marriage. Apparently, there are rumors going around the school." I felt my face flush. "Deborah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Have there been?" "Because Sarah seemed to know quite a lot about your theories on monogamy. She said you'd discussed them with several of the other parents." I tried to remember exactly what I'd said and to whom. Last week at school pickup, I'd gotten into a conversation with a few other mothers about a celebrity divorce that had been in the news. I might have shared some of my perspectives on modern marriage. I may have mentioned that I think people should be more honest about relationships, but... "Eudoxia, listen to me very carefully. I don't know what's going on with you and my son, but Emma is 7 years old. She doesn't need to be exposed to adult problems at school because her mother can't keep her personal business private. Nothing is happening with Emma. She's completely fine." "Is she?" "Because her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called Nathan today. Emma's been asking questions about why some families are different from others. She's been worried about whether Mommy and Daddy still love each other." My heart sank. I had no idea. "Well, now you do. Fix this, Eudoxia. Whatever you're doing, whatever point you're trying to make, fix it before you destroy your family." Deborah hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in the kitchen. Nathan appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. "Emma's in bed. She wants you to come say goodnight." I went upstairs to Emma's room, where she was tucked under her princess comforter with her favorite stuffed elephant. "Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Sweetheart, why would you ask that?" "Lily's parents got divorced, and before they did, they were acting like you and Daddy, not talking and sleeping in different rooms." I sat down on the edge of her bed and smoothed her hair. "Daddy and I are just working through some grown-up things. It has nothing to do with you, and we both love you very much." "But are you getting divorced?" "No, sweetheart, we're not getting divorced." Emma nodded, but she still looked worried. "Can you tell Daddy to come say goodnight too?" "Of course." I found Nathan in his office again, but this time his laptop was closed, and he was just sitting in his chair, staring out the window. "Emma wants you to say goodnight." "I'll be right there." "Nathan, we need to talk about what's happening at school. I didn't realize—" "We'll talk later." But later never came. Nathan went to bed in the guest room again, and I found myself alone with my thoughts and my phone. I texted Julian. "Things are getting complicated." His response came quickly. "Want to talk about it? I get off work in an hour." I looked toward the guest room, where I could see light under the door. Nathan was probably working again, or researching, or whatever it was he'd been doing on his laptop every night. "Yes," I typed back. "Let's meet." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, but Nathan's voice stopped me. "Where are you going?" I turned around. He was standing at the top of the stairs in his pajamas, looking down at me. "I need some air. I need to think." It's 10:30 at night, Eudoxia. I'm a grown woman, Nathan. I don't need a curfew. Nathan came down the stairs slowly. You're right, you don't need a curfew, but you do need to decide what you want, because this limbo we're living in isn't fair to anyone, especially Emma. I'm trying to figure out what I want. That's exactly what I'm doing. No, Nathan said quietly. You're trying to figure out how to have everything you want without consequences. But that's not how life works. I left without responding, but his words followed me out into the night. As I drove toward downtown, I told myself that Nathan was wrong. I wasn't trying to avoid consequences. I was trying to build something better, something more honest. But deep down, I was starting to wonder if the price of honesty might be higher than I'd calculated. The call came on a Thursday morning while I was at work. Nathan's name appeared on my phone screen during my 10-minute break between patients. I need you to meet me at an office downtown this afternoon, he said without preamble. What kind of office? A law office. We're going to talk to someone about our situation. My blood went cold. Nathan, don't you think we should try counseling first, or just talking more between ourselves? We've talked, Eudoxia. Now we need professional guidance. The address he gave me was for a law firm I'd never heard of. Gold and Associates. I spent the rest of my workday in a haze of anxiety and anger. Nathan was escalating this situation unnecessarily. We could work through our problems without involving lawyers. The law office was in a sleek downtown building with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. I arrived 15 minutes late, hoping to make a point about Nathan's high-handed approach to scheduling my day. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Nathan was already sitting across from a woman I didn't recognize. She appeared to be in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a professional bun and intelligent brown eyes behind stylish glasses. Eudoxia, Nathan said, standing up when I entered. This is Ruby Gold. Ruby stood and extended her hand. Ms. Crane, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. I shook her hand and sat down, looking back and forth between Nathan and this lawyer. I have to say, I'm not sure why we need legal counsel to discuss our marriage. I asked Nathan to invite you here so we could all be on the same page about the situation, Ruby said, opening a folder on the table. Nathan has shared some concerns about the state of your marriage, and I wanted to hear your perspective. My perspective is that Nathan is overreacting to some honest conversations we've been having about the nature of modern relationships. Ruby nodded. Can you tell me more about these conversations? I launched into my explanation about the unrealistic nature of monogamy, about the importance of honesty in marriage, about how society's expectations set couples up for failure. Ruby listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. And how has Nathan responded to these conversations? Ruby asked. He's been resistant to change. He's very traditional in his thinking. I see. And during these conversations about the theoretical nature of monogamy, have you discussed any specific situations or relationships? Something in her tone made me pause. What do you mean? Ruby consulted her notes. Nathan has mentioned that you spend Thursday evenings away from home. Can you tell me about that? I have a book club. At Vintage Wine Bar? My heart started racing. It's a book and wine club. A lot of book clubs meet in restaurants or bars these days. Of course, and the other members of this book club. Can you provide their names? I stared at her. Why would you need their names? Just for clarification, Nathan seems to think that your Thursday evening activities might not be what you've described. I looked at Nathan, who was sitting quietly with his hands folded on the table. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. I don't appreciate being interrogated about my social activities. I understand, Ruby said. Let me ask you a different question. Are you familiar with a man named Julian Park? The room seemed to tilt. How do you... Mr. Park is a bartender at Vintage Wine Bar. According to phone records, you've exchanged over 300 text messages with him in the past 2 months. I felt trapped, but I forced myself to stay calm. Julian is a friend. There's nothing wrong with having friends. Of course not, although some of these text messages seem quite intimate for a friendship. Ruby pulled out a sheet of paper. For example, this message from you to Mr. Park dated last Tuesday. Can't stop thinking about last night. Nathan has no idea what he's missing. My face burned. You went through my phone? Actually, Nathan said quietly, you left your tablet open on the kitchen counter. The messages sync automatically. Ruby continued. There's also this message from Mr. Park to you. Your husband sounds boring. You deserve better. And your response, I'm starting to realize that. I stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're taking private conversations out of context. Sit down, Eudoxia, Ruby said, and something in her voice made me comply. We're also going to discuss this bank transfer from your joint account to Mr. Park's personal account. $800, dated 3 weeks ago. Can you explain that? My mouth went dry. I'd forgotten about helping Julian with his rent. He'd been short that month, and it seemed like such a small thing at the time. Julian needed help with some expenses. Friends help each other. Friends, Ruby repeated. And this help, did you discuss it with Nathan before transferring money from your joint account? It was my money too. Yes, it was. But it was also Nathan's money. And Emma's money, since it came from the account you use for household expenses. I looked at Nathan, who was still sitting quietly. You're really going to let her attack me like this? I'm not attacking you, Ruby said. I'm trying to understand the situation so I can advise Nathan on his options. His options for what? Ruby and Nathan exchanged a look. Eudoxia, Nathan said, I want a divorce. The words hit me like a physical blow. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Nathan, this is insane. So I have a friend. So we've talked about opening up our marriage. That doesn't mean you should throw away 8 years. You're right, Nathan said. It doesn't mean I should throw away 8 years. It means you already did. Ruby spoke up. Eudoxia, I want to be clear about something. Nathan isn't asking for anything unreasonable. He wants joint custody of Emma, with her primary residence remaining in the family home. He wants to keep the house and buy out your half of the equity. He wants to split your other assets fairly. And what if I don't agree to any of this? Ruby's expression didn't change. Then we'll go to court. And all of this evidence, the text messages, the bank transfers, the testimony from witnesses about your public statements regarding your marriage, will become part of the public record. I felt sick. You're blackmailing me. I'm informing you of the reality of your situation, Ruby said. You've been having an affair. You've been using marital funds to support your affair partner. You've been publicly humiliating your husband and potentially damaging your daughter's reputation at school. I never meant for Emma to be affected. But she has been affected, Nathan said. She's been asking me if we're getting divorced. She's been worried and confused because other kids at school are talking about our family. I looked back and forth between Nathan and Ruby. I need time to think about this. Of course, Ruby said. Take all the time you need. But I should mention that Nathan has already filed the initial paperwork. You'll be served with divorce papers within the next few days. The room was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Nathan was supposed to come around, supposed to realize that I was offering him something better than the traditional marriage trap. Nathan, please, can we talk about this privately? Nathan looked at Ruby, who nodded. I'll give you a few minutes, she said, gathering her papers and leaving the room. As soon as the door closed, I turned to Nathan. This is crazy. You're throwing away our family over nothing. Nothing? Nathan's calm facade finally cracked. You've been cheating on me for months. You've been lying to me, humiliating me, spending our money on another man. You've been so focused on justifying your behavior that you haven't even noticed what it's doing to our daughter. I was trying to save our marriage. I was trying to be honest. You were trying to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted to keep the security of being married while having the freedom of being single. But that's not how marriage works. It could be how marriage works. Other people do it. Nathan shook his head. Other people aren't me. I don't want an open marriage. I don't want to share my wife with another man. I want a partner who chooses me the way I chose her. I did choose you. I married you. And then you chose someone else too. And when I told you that wasn't acceptable to me, you tried to convince me that I was the problem for not being enlightened enough to accept it. Ruby knocked on the door and came back in. Are we ready to continue? I looked at Nathan one more time. Is this really what you want? It's not what I wanted, he said quietly. But it's what you made necessary. Ruby sat back down and opened her folder. Eudoxia, do you have any questions about the proposed settlement? I shook my head. I felt numb, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Then I'll need you to sign some paperwork acknowledging that you've received this information. Your husband's attorney will be in touch with the formal documents. Wait, I said. You're Nathan's attorney? Ruby smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. I am. But you said you wanted to hear my perspective. I did, and I have. It's been very illuminating. As I signed the papers with shaking hands, I realized that I'd been completely outmaneuvered. Nathan hadn't brought me here for mediation or counseling. He'd brought me here to gather evidence, to get me on record admitting to the affair and the financial impropriety. Walking out of that office building, I felt like I was in a nightmare. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the enlightened one, the one who understood modern relationships better than everyone else. Instead, I was about to become another divorce statistic, and everyone would think it was my fault. The divorce papers arrived on a Saturday morning, delivered by a process server who rang our doorbell at 8 a.m. Emma was still in her pajamas, eating cereal and watching cartoons in the living room, when the man in the cheap suit handed me the manila envelope. Eudoxia Crane. Yes. You've been served. Nathan appeared behind me in the hallway. Thank you, he said to the server, then gently closed the door. Daddy, who is that? Emma called from the living room. Just someone delivering papers for work, sweetheart, Nathan replied. I stared at the envelope in my hands. Even though I'd known this was coming, seeing my name printed on official court documents made it feel devastatingly real. I can't believe you're actually doing this, I whispered. I can't believe you made it necessary, Nathan replied. That afternoon, I called my sister Marina. At 29, she was 3 years younger than me and had always looked up to me as the one who had her life figured out. She lived in Portland with her boyfriend Marcus, working as a freelance graphic designer and maintaining the kind of bohemian lifestyle I sometimes envied. He served you with papers? Marina's voice was incredulous. Just like that? Just like that. Marina, I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. Okay, first of all, breathe. Second of all, this might actually be a blessing in disguise. You've been talking for years about feeling trapped in suburban wife mode. Maybe this is the universe giving you permission to be yourself. But Emma will be fine. Kids are resilient. And honestly, it's probably better for her to see you living authentically than to grow up thinking women have to sacrifice their happiness for marriage. Marina's support felt like a lifeline. You really think so? I know so. Nathan's being incredibly controlling about this. Most men would be thrilled to have a wife who was honest about wanting more freedom. That's what I thought too. Look, you need to get ahead of this narrative. Don't let Nathan and his uptight family paint you as the villain. You are trying to save your marriage by being honest about your needs. That evening, I decided to take Marina's advice. I crafted a Facebook post that I hoped would help people understand my perspective. Going through some major life changes right now. It's amazing how some people react when you try to bring honesty and authenticity to relationships. Apparently, being true to yourself is threatening to people who prefer comfortable lies. Grateful for the friends who support growth and self-discovery over conformity. Authentic living, nos growth mindset, nos no regrets. The post got several supportive comments from Marina and a few of my more liberal friends, but I noticed that some people who usually liked my posts remained silent. Monday morning at work was uncomfortable. Jennifer and Carol were polite but distant, and I caught them whispering in the break room when they thought I wasn't around. "Everything okay?" I asked when I walked into the staff room for lunch. "Fine," Jennifer said quickly, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Actually," Carol said, "we heard about your divorce. I'm sorry you're going through that." "Thank you, it's been difficult, but sometimes these things are necessary for everyone's happiness." "Right," Carol said. "Well, if you need anything." But I could tell from their body language that they thought I was the one at fault. The narrative was already being written, and I was the villain. That afternoon, I had to pick Emma up from school for a dentist appointment. As I waited in the pickup line, I saw several other mothers I knew chatting in a group near the school entrance. When they noticed me, their conversation stopped, and they looked away. Sarah Martinez, the mother who had apparently spoken to Deborah about my marriage, walked past my car without acknowledging me. We'd been friendly for 2 years, bonding over the challenges of raising daughters the same age. Emma got in the car quietly, and I could tell something was wrong. "How was school, sweetheart?" "Fine. Just fine." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Lily's mom said her mom said that you and Daddy are getting divorced because you have a boyfriend." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Lily's mom shouldn't be talking about grown-up things with children. "But do you have a boyfriend?" I pulled into the dentist's office parking lot and turned to face my daughter. "Emma, sometimes grown-ups have friends that other grown-ups don't understand, but that doesn't mean anything bad." "So you do have a boyfriend?" "I have friends, and right now, Daddy and I are trying to figure out what's best for our family." Emma nodded, but she looked confused and sad. "I just want you and Daddy to be happy." "We want that too, sweetheart." That evening, Nathan and I had our first real conversation since the divorce papers were served. Emma was upstairs doing homework, and we found ourselves alone in the kitchen. "The school called," Nathan said. "Apparently, Emma's been having some behavioral issues. She got in trouble for yelling at another kid who said something about our family." "What did the kid say?" "That her mommy was a cheater and her daddy was stupid." I felt sick. "Nathan, I never wanted Emma to be affected by this." "But she is affected. She's 7 years old, and she's defending her mother's honor on the playground because other kids are repeating things their parents said." "So what do you want me to do? I can't control what other people say." "You could have controlled what you did. You could have thought about the consequences before you decided to have an affair." "I was trying to save our marriage." Nathan looked at me with something that might have been pity. "No, Eudoxia, you were trying to save yourself from having to choose. But life doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences." The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of legal meetings, uncomfortable social encounters, and Emma's increasingly frequent questions about why Mommy and Daddy didn't live in the same room anymore. I tried to maintain my social media presence, posting about self-care and authenticity, but the supportive comments became fewer and fewer. People I'd considered friends were clearly taking Nathan's side. The final blow came at Emma's school spring festival. I arrived to find Nathan already there, helping Emma with the ring toss game. They looked happy together, laughing as Emma tried to land rings on bottles. I approached them with a smile, but Emma's reaction was subdued. "Hi, Mommy." "Hi, sweetheart. Are you having fun?" "Daddy won me a stuffed animal." I looked around and realized that several other parents were watching us, whispering among themselves. The comfortable community I'd been part of for 2 years had turned cold and judgmental. "Eudoxia." I turned to see Ruby Gold approaching with a man I didn't recognize. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the intimidating lawyer from our meeting. "Ruby, I didn't expect to see you here." "My nephew goes to school here. I'm visiting for the festival." She gestured to the man beside her. "This is my brother, David." David smiled and shook my hand, but I could see recognition in his eyes. He knew who I was. "How are you holding up?" Ruby asked, and her tone was surprisingly kind. "I've been better. I'm sure. These situations are never easy for anyone involved." I watched as Nathan lifted Emma onto his shoulders so she could see the puppet show better. They looked like a complete family unit, even without me. "Can I ask you something?" I said to Ruby. "Of course." "Do you think I'm a terrible person?" Ruby considered the question seriously. "I think you're a person who made some choices without fully considering the consequences. That doesn't make you terrible, it makes you human. But you're helping Nathan take everything away from me. I'm helping Nathan protect himself and his daughter. There's a difference." As I watched Ruby walk away to join her brother, I realized that she was right. This wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about Nathan choosing to build a life with people who shared his values and priorities. And I wasn't one of those people anymore. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my car outside Vintage Wine Bar, staring through the window at Julian behind the bar. He looked the same as always, charming, carefree, focused on mixing drinks for customers who would come and go without leaving any lasting impact on his life. I realized that I could go inside, order a drink, pretend that everything was fine. But for the first time in months, I didn't want to. I wanted to go home to my family, to try to fix what I'd broken. But it was too late for that. The damage was done, and Nathan had moved on. I drove home alone, to a house that no longer felt like mine, to a life that I'd destroyed in pursuit of something I'd convinced myself was better. The final hearing arrived on a rainy Tuesday. My attorney reminded me, "We're minimizing damage. Nathan's terms are generous, considering the circumstances. I'd had an affair, used marital funds, publicly humiliated my husband." Nathan arrived with Ruby, looking composed and confident, a man at peace with his decision. Their easy rapport suggested genuine connection, maybe more. Judge Williams reviewed custody. Primary residence with the father. Mother receives alternating weekends and one evening weekly. My relationship with Emma reduced to legal terminology. Property division. Marital home remains with Mr. Crane. "Do you accept these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor." 8 years of marriage ended instantly. Outside, Nathan approached. "This isn't revenge. I hope you find happiness." With Ruby, "That's all you need to know." He walked toward her car, leaving me with legal documents marking the end of everything.